Eggnog and family and cheer and all that good stuff. I'm watching hockey and basketball. This guy is, he's had a hell of a year, to be honest with you, and he'll be covering the game in Pittsburgh on Sunday when the Steelers and the Ravens get together to celebrate all things hatred on a day of love and family and happiness at the Confluence. He's a Marylander, I believe, by birth, if not by, at one point, long residency. He's been trapped up there with Yins and that, covering all things Pittsburgh sports for the Associated Press, and his work does show up at WNST.net. We welcome Will Graves, one of our defending champions, back, and thousands follow his journey out at Will Graves AP. What's a nice guy like you doing in a place like that, Will Graves?
Just lucky, I guess, man. Just lucky.
Well, you've had a great year,
cheap
right?
Cheap living, man. Look, it's cheap living. I lived in South Florida for 6.5 years, and that was not cheap living. So,
all right. I understand.
Although I do miss it during the winter.
Well, you get somebody else to shovel the snow there for you, right?
My 7-year-old's not quite old enough yet, unfortunately.
Working on that. You're grooming them, grooming them to pitch in. Part of the family business is shoveling snow in Pittsburgh. We got a game on Sunday, right? And this is when the schedule makers put this thing out. These cats in the NFL, they kind of know what they're doing, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I think that if you had asked the Steelers after maybe week 4 or 5, I think they probably thought they would have had things wrapped up by now. Hasn't quite turned out that way, but the Ravens have hung around, and then the Steelers have kind of gotten it together. And this is sort of as it should be when you look at the hot mess that is what's going on in Ohio these days with the Bengals and the Browns, and these guys by far the class of the division. And it should be, it should be a good one on Sunday. It's going to be close. I mean, that's the weird thing. I think the Steelers are the more talented group overall, but it doesn't seem to matter. I mean, Ravens won, 6 out of 7 in this one, so it should be interesting. I think the Steelers are favored by 4, which sounds about right, but I think it's going to be a field goal game no matter what. So,
well, we say, where are all the matchups in this one? I mean, where aren't the matchups in this one, right? I mean, there's the fact that the Ravens have bloodied their nose 4 times in a row. I figured this out this week, and I'm going to keep going back to this graphic that I have, Will. It's Ravens greater than Steelers, greater than Bengals, greater than Ravens, right? So, and then the Ravens beat the Steelers again, and the Steelers beat the Bengals again, and then the Bengals beat the Ravens. And then we got the Bengals next week again. The Steelers get that 17th week bye that they're so comfortable and familiar with now with Cleveland. And we get to play them twice earlier in the year, so all's fair in love and football. But it is fascinating that the Ravens have had the upper hand in this thing. The matchup that concerns me the most is Bell against the front seven after the Ravens struggled against the Eagles. But more than that, it's who marks Antonio Brown. And I know that wasn't an issue in the Cincinnati game. He was sort of silenced, but dude's working on 100 catches right now. No Jimmy Smith has been a real problem for elite receivers in the dynamic of this defense.
Well, I think what the Steelers have done, I think the first 5 weeks of the year, they got off that 4-1 start, and they were thinking, man, we're pretty good looking. And they got caught looking in the mirror, trying to win with style points. Then Ben gets hurt, and they get punched in the mouth in Miami, and it sort of went all downhill for a while there. They've kind of got it back together by getting away from having to make sure AB gets his touches. I mean, I think they figured out that the most direct route to the playoffs is in the hands of Le'Veon Bell. And he has been, to me, he might be the best all-around player in the NFL this week. I'm not saying, in the grand scheme of things, but he certainly the last 5 weeks has been by far the best player on the Steelers.
By the way, Brian Billick's our partner here. Brian comes on and does work with us with the Living Classrooms Foundation. And 2.5 years ago, he was saying Le'Veon Bell's the best player in the NFL. He's the player that you can't game plan properly for him because you don't have a matchup for him.
No, I mean, I think, I was talking to Darius Hayward-Bay about this a few weeks ago, and he's telling Le'Veon, who's still only 24 years old, when you turn 30, you should just be a receiver to prolong your career. And the guy has, his wide receiver skills, a running back's body, good hands, his vision and his patience. It's so bizarre. I mean, you've got him and D'Angelo Williams in the same backfield. D'Angelo probably will be back this week after missing 2 months with a bulky knee. And D'Angelo tries to make the hole when it isn't there. And Le'Veon is almost like a toddler holding the hand of a grown-up, sort of waiting to cross the street, the way he gets behind his blocker sometimes, puts his hand on their backs and sort of, minces his way through the hole until he sees it, and then he puts a foot down and goes. And then they line them up wide. I mean, a lot of their pass stuff to him, and there's some little bit of, curls out of the backfield. But, I mean, they also like, especially near the goal line, splitting him wide, getting him one-on-one with a safety. Look, he's 6'2" and 235. He's going to have a matchup advantage over most guys. And Todd Haley has gotten really creative in ways of getting him the ball. And I think that's part of the deal. I mean, Todd's ability to find ways to get Le'Veon the ball in space is one of the reasons they've been so effective.
Look, Todd Haley had some problems in Kansas City and beyond, Arizona, the whole deal. He seems to have found some peace there with Ben Roethlisberger. And, when I see Ben Roethlisberger speak now, and I don't pretend to know Ben, I had him on the show when he was coming out of college, with Lee Steinberg, feels like 15 years ago now, right? Whenever it was, 2005, right? 4 or 5, Jacksonville, whatever that Super Bowl was. And I have some funny pictures of he and I together. And I think I even ribbed him about what happens if you become a Steeler. Since then, I've never spoken to him. Just from a press conference standpoint and from a leadership and the way he comes back from these injuries. And look, every time we play the Steelers, it feels like we beat half the team, right? I mean, these victories have been nice. They're wonderful. And I know we had Ryan Mallett at one point last year doing the dirty work and beating the Steelers up in a game they needed. But by and large, it always feels like there's some sort of depleted, no Martavis Bryant, banged up this. Roethlisberger was carted off the field last week, and he's going to try to Willis Reed it. I feel like this is trending the wrong way from the Ravens' perspective in that, I think the Steelers are about as healthy as they're going to get at this point, right?
Well, as healthy as they can be, one thing to watch is going to be Ladarius Green's status. I mean, he's a guy who had concussion issues in San Diego, caught a big third down conversion on that game-ending drive in Cincinnati and got, knocked heads with one of the Bengal defensive backs in the concussion protocol. He has helped mitigate his emergence in the last 5 weeks since he came off PUP, has sort of mitigated the fact that Sammy Coates has got 2 broken fingers on his left hand, so he can't catch the ball. Martavis Bryant, obviously, out for the year. Do the Steelers need him long term, and they probably need him on Sunday because he's the one guy that can sort of help take the pressure off Antonio Brown down the field. But in general, yeah, I mean, I think the Steelers, let's be honest, last year they beat Michael Vick in the Monday night game here when Ben was out, and that was after, gosh, I can't even remember the kicker they had. They ended up cutting him the next day and getting Chris Boswell, who had 6 field goals last week against Cincinnati. And then in the 2014 playoff game, Le'Veon Bell has his knee hyperextended in the season finale against the Bengals, and so that obviously, affected them. So I think this is, I mean, you could say on the whole that the Steelers are due just because of the way this rivalry tends to go. But I also think, Mike Tomlin's downplayed it. I think there's a little bit of John Harbaugh knows what he's doing when when his team plays the Steelers, and I think that's certainly an advantage that the Ravens are going to have on Sunday.
He is Will Graves. You can follow his journey out on our website at WNST.net, where his AP work shows up. He is the Associated Press sports writer in Pittsburgh and can be followed on Twitter at Will Graves AP. Other side of this, the ball here, I find it fascinating. We've had the Hatfields and the McCoys here forever. Give everybody your background. You're a Maryland guy, but you're like a Redskin guy, right? I mean, by birth,
yes,
right?
Yes, and trust me, when I watch them, stumble all over themselves to the Panthers on Monday night was just sort of I just texted my high school buddies, and it was like fraud alert in D.C. It's just very disheartening, and even worse when my 7-year-old son, who's starting to get into football, loves Cam Newton, and the first thing he said when he came to the bedroom this morning was, "Daddy, what was the score?" And then took great glee in knowing that the Panthers had beaten and had beaten the Redskins. So yeah, I am not beholden. I date back. One of the first games I remember watching on TV was a Redskins Baltimore Colts preseason game. I want to say it was 81-ish. So I've always had sort of a soft spot, and I don't like what Modell did to Cleveland. I had friends from Cleveland. So that's sort of, and it still hurts, and it obviously looked at how it turned out.
Dude, we can't be held responsible 21 years later for the fact that they suck. I mean, come on, man.
No.
They've had every opportunity. They got their jury. I mean, our team's playing out in Indianapolis, running around with horseshoes on, and Andrew Luck. I
agree.
Come on.
I'm on both sides of that. It's funny. I was. Another part of my job, I write about gymnastics at the Olympic level for us. I was in Rio I was talking to Simone Biles this week about a story that's coming out next week, and we were just sort of chatting, and she ended up doing a towel wave or something at a Browns game. Her father is from there. And she said, well, I know nothing about football, and I watched the Browns for 5 minutes, and I knew that they sucked.
Oh, right. Of course. I thought she'd be a Houston Texans. Isn't she a Houston girl?
She is a Houston Texans fan, but her father, Ron, is from Cleveland, and he's still God bless him, he has had season tickets for 30-some years, and they've had the financial flexibility for him to, he will fly from Houston to Cleveland on game day weekends, and he will do road games most of the time. He's got a lot of family from Baltimore. So he travels frequently, and so she's sort of in the, on the peripheral there, sort of.
You don't want to be a Brown. This is not the time to get on the Browns bandwagon. This is no time to. They're not the team you want to adopt. Now
the rest of her family has season tickets to the Texans, and so she told me that she was surprised when everybody cheered when Osweiler got pulled. Of course, she's not paying attention. She just thought it was weird, and I'm like, well, that's the difference between. That's one of the many, many differences between football and gymnastics. So anyway, the Browns sucking goes far beyond just the normal sports fan. I think everybody at the culture at large sort of understands the kind of straits that those guys are in.
Hey, Will, I want to get back to football and Christmas and holiday and your kid, and we'll get to the Orioles, which I know is another one of your pastimes as a younger person before you went up there and had to cover the Buccos and all that. We are family. But the Olympics and your experience, just run me through that a little bit. I mean, I do talk to a lot of people that have been down there this year and previous years, and the corruption and sort of the stench around all of it. I know Rio's beautiful but ugly. I was down there. I saw the Rolling Stones play down on the beach there back in 2006, so I've been to Rio. And I love traveling the world. I mean, my wife and I are planning on going to see Springsteen in Australia in a couple of weeks over and in New Zealand as well. Just your thoughts about 3 weeks with the Olympic team down in Rio. I mean, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and obviously the Ryan Lochte thing on top of that, right?
Right, yeah. I mean, this was my fourth Olympics, my second summer. I covered gymnastics for us, so that was, obviously good time to be writing about gymnastics for the U.S. I mean, you've got Simone Biles, 5 medals, 4 golds, team wins gold medal. I mean, all this kind of good stuff. However, the one thing I've noticed, especially the last two, Rio and Sochi in 2014, there's just the way the IOC uses an Olympic bid, and then the politicians in the host cities use the clout from that to basically kind of ramrod projects that just do not, stress taxpayers in ways that do not need to be stressed for things that they don't necessarily need. And
like gold-plated toilets and stuff like that in skyboxes for kings to sit on 3 times when they come to the Olympics and then go away, right?
Well, they spent billions of dollars on a rail system that we never used. I was there for 21 days, and not one time did I get on this rail system that they built for the Olympics. I took a bus when I wanted to go to Copacabana Beach to watch volleyball, or that was the best people watching spot, obviously. Just that kind of stuff. And when you're driving through, and there are beautiful neighborhoods in Rio, and there's also a lot of favelas, a lot of slums. And the way that they are there's no it's not like you sort of gradually go your way from Beverly Hills through Orange County to Compton, right? It's not like that. It's not like living in Northwest DC and sort of, meandering your way through Northeast and then downtown and then you get to Southeast. It's not like that. It's like, boom, it's like next door, like the next block. Here's $1 million mansion. The next block, there's a favela. And it's very jarring. You see people there's a lot of poverty there. There was one night we had a dinner, we gorged ourselves at a Trascaria, and we're literally half a block from the restaurant where you get all the food you could want in the world, and then you just see people in the streets, obviously in houses with no windows, shoddy roofing. And there was just nothing going on there, and it just makes you think about, what are we doing here? And I wrote something after I got back from Rio on my own personal blog about how it would be nice if the IOC, instead of trying to make things more opulent, would kind of go the other way. And I think what you see with LA and its bid for the 2024 games, their bid's low. They're not building anything new that's going to be permanent. They're going to use temporary stuff for a lot of the venues, and then they're just going to rehabilitate some of the. I mean, they're talking about using the Forum where the Lakers played 20 years ago.
Sure.
As a venue site. So I mean, that's to me that's the way it wants to go if they want to talk about being, a true leader in terms of all the things that the Olympic ideal, which is inclusiveness, and I think part of it is not pricing everybody out of it. I mean, that's why you find a lot of cities not even wanting to host anymore because it's just not worth the aggravation.
Well, and it's also corrupt. I mean, and no one wants to be a part of a corrupt bid, right? I mean, a bid where $100 handshakes, or in this case, $1 million handshakes, are taking place to win votes. I mean, that's the same thing with the World Cup, right? I mean,
right. I mean, I think part of it, you're exactly right, and I think part of it is, people are. It's becoming increasingly obvious that it's just not worth the cost, the actual fiscal cost. I mean, we had a story move last week that some of the bills that are coming due from Rio are not being paid. Stunner! What a
Imagine
stunner!
That.
It's happened in lots of places. I mean, look, one of the reasons Greece's economy collapsed 7 or 8 years ago is because of the after effect of having all the spending they did to get the '04 games in Athens. So, I'd like to see them go to a rotation. Maybe they pick 3 permanent cities and a fourth that sort of pops around. And that gives host cities reasons to remain invested in the infrastructure that they built to get the games in the first place. I could see like a North American city, a European city, and an Asian city for both summer and winter. And then maybe you find you have a wild card that you do every 16 years to kind of spread it. That to me would be a very easy way to, there's no money in that for the IOC, but that to me would be something that, I mean, the time has come because the athletes do not care. I mean, the athletes do not care where it is. I mean, it's great that it's in these interesting places, but they could have had it in my backyard if we said, okay, once every 4 years, the best athletes in the world are going to come and billions of people are going to watch. Okay, when do I get there? And they don't care where it is. And that's what I think the IOC has just lost complete sight of, the fact that the athletes don't care and they need to be more, it needs to be smaller, and anyway, that's my big. I mean, these are first world problems for me.
Well, I mean, you spent a month of your life living down there, reporting for the Associated Press. I mean, I think your observations are, it's why I put you on the show to give me these observations, because I wasn't there, but I've witnessed it and I've talked openly about it. I've been to the World Cup. I've never been to any of the Olympic Games. I had a chance to go to Atlanta and Calgary, Salt Lake City and Vancouver. I mean, it's been on the continent here a couple of times. First off, I don't like the cold, so I wouldn't be as much to be like standing at the end of a ski slope watching dudes do pirouettes up in the air or whatever.
Right.
And the summer games in '96, the bomb went off a couple of days after I decided to not go, so I felt like probably not a bad idea that I wasn't standing in the Centennial Plaza down in Atlanta that night. So I just think it's kind of weird, and I watch it now, and my wife watches it because everybody's wife watches it, right? But to be a part of it and how it all happens, and the immense level of corruption that goes on all the way around it, including the World Cup, where they're in Qatar building stadia in the middle of sand dunes on 120-degree days with immigrant workers. It's when they're perfectly good stadiums all throughout Europe, Australia, Asia, North America, South America, where they could play these games, right?
No, you're absolutely right, and the other thing is, we had these security calls in the months leading up to the games, and our head of security was like, "Look, you're going to get robbed, you're going to get mugged." None of that stuff actually happened to us. I mean, I only for about 5 minutes did I feel not safe, and that was more my own paranoia than anything that was actually going on around me. And part
One
of
too many Caprianas will do do to you, Will Graves. I mean, come on.
That may or may not be a true statement.
I'm just saying.
But when you see, I mean, look, they had tens of thousands of militia of their National Guard out. Basically, you're driving, down the street and you see, 6 guys with machine guns standing under overpasses. I never felt unsafe. At the same time, I wondered, could these resources have been better spent elsewhere? I mean, it was probably, and I'm sure we did a story on it. I haven't read it. I imagine the crime in the other parts of the city was probably through the roof just because everybody was in these 2 concentrated areas where the games were. So, look, but that being said, and don't want your listeners to think, God, this guy's just a total cynic. The problem with the not the problem with the Olympics, but the Olympics sort of get you every time. And I'll tell you a real quick story. So I covered gymnastics. Part of the deal of that is that trampoline, which is sort of like basically like a Cirque du Soleil competition. Okay,
Sure.
It's in the middle. Like they have like the first week of stuff, artistic gymnastics, and there's a small break for the athletes, and then they do 2 days of trampoline. Well, the girl from Canada, her name is Rosie McLennan. She ends up winning the gold medal. She won it in 2012. We're sitting there and we're talking to her afterwards, and she had barely qualified for the Olympics because she had 2 concussions last year. One was a training accident, and one she said she got hit in her head by a car door when she bent down to pick something up, whatever. So she wins, and she's talking about the long road back, and then she sort of offhandedly mentions that the biggest problem for her coming back was in January, when she started ramping up her program, that she would get in the middle of the hardest parts of her routine. Basically, imagine jumping out of a 3-story building 10 times over the course of a minute, and flipping as much as you can. That is basically what trampoline is, okay? And she would talk about how, because of the concussions, her eyes would start vibrating in her head, in the socket, as she's doing the routine. She cannot see where she's going. She's literally flying blind, okay? And the terror that it took her months to deal with, the terror that comes with that. And it wasn't all the time, but she could not predict when it was going to happen. And sort of like the work that it took and what her medical team did to help her get through that. And look, this is trampoline. She's not going to make millions of dollars. She's not Simone Biles, who's on the cover of everything, has her own autobiography.
She just wants to win,
now.
right? Yeah,
right. And it's me. I'm the only North American writer. I'm the only U.S. media in this little pen after she wins, and there's the Canadian press there, and that was it. There was like maybe 5,000 people in the stands. It wasn't on TV. I'm sure it was streamed online somewhere, and that, to me, is sort of the essence of the Olympics. It happened to me in 2014. There was a guy that did aerials, which is like gymnastics on skis, and he's from Kazakhstan, and he tells this story. It's 1 a.m. It's me and the Kazakhstan media guy, and that's it, because nobody cares, right?
And the Kazakhstan media guy is under state run anyway, so he can't say what the hell he wants anyway.
He tells this story. This is Anton Kushner is this guy's name, and the gold medal. He was supposed to medal in Vancouver, didn't, got hurt. The national sporting governing body in Kazakhstan cut him off, said, you know what, you're not getting money anymore. His wife ended up taking a job just so he could get health insurance to have the surgery he needed to kind of get his leg right.
Welcome to Kazakhstan. I saw Borat.
And then he ends up winning the gold medal. And again, it's just me and the state media guy and Anton. I mean, and it's just he's just talking like you and I are talking right now. And those are the stories that make to me. That's what gets you every time. As cynical as you want to be about it, at the end of the day, that is still the athletes always save the IOC's ass. Always. And the IOC knows that, and that's why they can get away with a lot of stuff they get away with. And now I'm really tweaked about it. But that being said, it's the endeavor is important, but they could just do so much better job of handling it, organizing it, running it. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, everybody talks about the NFL, and the NFL's got problems, whatever. I mean, come on, it's nothing compared to what needs to happen with the Olympic movement.
It's funny. Will Graves is here from the Associated Press, our dear friend from Pittsburgh. He covers the Steelers. We'll get to the Penguins. But, a couple little notes here for your sense of humor and the benefit of our audience. You said, could do a better job, and then you say you get too cynical, and then you mentioned 6 militia riding around. Last time when I think about that, I think about the Orioles playing a baseball game here for no one. And then they wonder why no one comes back the next year. But I know you got an Oriole heart as well. You'll be covering the Ravens and the Steelers here this weekend. You can follow Will Graves at Will Graves AP out on Twitter, as well as at WNST.net, where a lot of the Associated Press work does show up, and his Steelers work shows up as well. Who do you think's going to win this game? Will, I mean, is this the Steelers' turn to win this game at home? Certainly, they're a favorite,
I think they are. The last time that they had been in Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown in the same game against the Ravens at Heinz Field, Ben threw for 6 touchdowns. Okay,
I don't remember that day. I don't want to remember that day.
And so I think, look, this is as good and as healthy as they've been. They do need Stephon Tuitt. He's got a sprained knee. They hope he can play this week. He tweaked it on the first first drive against the Bengals. Very important to their run defense. I mean, the Ravens have gotten much better with the run as the season's gone on. Terrence West is obviously doing some things. The Ravens' best bet is to control the ball and force the Steelers into mistakes. They can do that. They have done that. I mean, that game in Baltimore earlier this year, that was just baffling. I mean, I know Ben was coming off the knee surgery, probably should not have played. I mean, probably they were limited with the playbook, and they admitted it after all week saying they weren't. After the game, oh yeah, well our job was basically to protect Ben. We couldn't do things that we normally wanted to do. Well, I would have rolled with the dice with Landry Jones in that game if I was them.
Well, I would say if they were playing the Browns that day or the 49ers at home, he wouldn't have played.
Right. And that's, look, you have to accept the risks with that. And I get that, but I just think that Landry is not terrible. Heck, he played okay against the Patriots a couple of weeks before. It was the defense that was the problem in that game. So, I think the Steelers are playing better. A very important game for them against the Bengals in the way that they won. I mean, one thing they haven't done a lot during this at all this season, and really not even that much last year, is won tight games. Okay, I mean I think Sunday was their first game and a victory in a game decided by less than 7 points since week 15 of last year. And they've only had a couple of those games, and their games are not tight. And when they are tight, they're like what happened with the Cowboys this year, where the Cowboys went down the field in the last 2 minutes and won the game. So important for them, for their confidence in terms of late game situations, which I think we're probably going to get down to on Sunday. It's going to be late. I see Tucker tying it with a 51-yarder with 42 seconds left, and then the Steelers winning it in overtime, 23-20.
I don't like the way that sounds. You're trying to curdle my eggnog. Don't do that to me, Will.
I'm just. I mean, I think they're due. I mean, I think we can all admit that these guys are pretty evenly matched, and if you keep flipping a coin one way, eventually the odds sort of. And if you flip heads 8 times in a row, eventually you're going to get tails up there. And
that's what I'm worried about. Yeah,
I think that's probably where we're at. The Steelers just need to do what they've been doing: give the ball to Le'Veon Bell, protect Ben, and get one turnover when they absolutely need it. If they can do that, they should win the game. But I still don't trust them. I mean, I still think that they're good, but they're not always good. I mean, the first half against Cincinnati, they were pretty awful. So they do that against the Ravens, and they're going to lose.
All right, well, tell Mr. Rooney to make me something nice for dinner up there because I'll be having dinner with the Rooney family as well as the Tomlin family. I told Tomlin I want to be like the purple Grinch that comes down the chimney and just, poops on the eggnog right there on Christmas Day for him. So it's good. Somebody's going to get their feelings hurt, right? This is Christmas, and everybody in America will be watching. I mean, this is almost Thanksgiving-esque in sort of the way the game is going to be represented for families around the country and people gathering, and no doubt watching a game with huge consequences and significance. So we're excited about it. I'm moving Christmas a day on behalf of the NFL Grinch and Roger Goodell putting this game on Christmas Day, and I hope to spend it with you on Sunday at Heinz Field, man.
All right, man. Well, safe travels up here. It should be. My kids don't care. I mean, let's be honest. My kids, they're going to be ripped through their stuff by 7:00. So I mean, heck, they could have had the game at 10 in the morning. It'd have been fine. So I will be an afterthought by the time the kickoff comes around to my kids. So the guilt that I would have felt a few years ago has evaporated. So that's good.
Bring me some homemade cookies. I like butter. Anything with a little butter in it works for me. So that covers the whole cookie family. So it works for me. Hey, man, take care of yourself. We'll see you on Sunday. Merry Christmas, Will.
All right, Merry Christmas. Thanks.
You got it. Will Graves, AP, is the way to find him. One of our great defending champions and returning champs here from the Associated Press up in Pittsburgh. He also covers the Olympics and gymnastics. And I didn't even get to the Penguins with him. I could have him on more often. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. It's powered up by Planet Fitness and planetfitness.com. Don't forget, Tuesday night we have Mike Wallace joining us at Adams Jeep in Aberdeen. We'll be swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry and for the holidays. Come on out. Join us. We'd love to see you in Harford County. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. Our London trip is now on sale under the Trips tab. We've got a discount at $100 all week long for Christmas if you want to give it as a gift. Everyone loves a good trip to London for the holidays. participate in that next September and October with the Ravens, we're going to have a jolly old time. That's all I can say. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, anywhere social media travels, including streaming live on our Facebook and our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.